Good afternoon. This is Nancy Fleming, and you are joining us with Money and Motivation. And I have to tell you, 114 degrees here in Arizona. It's hot outside.
Do you know here it was 119 today?
Wouldn't surprise me.
You would think that not having the pavement, it would be cooler, but it's not.
Wow.
Yeah, I could feel it when I got out of the car. It was really bad, but that's not the only thing that's hot. We have a very hot guest tonight. We have Dr. Mark Meadows returning.
And you're looking pretty hot tonight.
Well, thank you very
I'm sorry.
much. I'll
I don't
keep
know
you
if I was
around.
supposed to say that.
Sure. I actually feel pretty hot tonight, too. Let me tell you. I just got back from vacation. So I did Bryce Canyon yesterday.
Nice.
It was beautiful. God's creation. You just look at that and think, how did that happen? Times we say that in our own lives too.
Where is that? Bryce.
What is it going to be on the just before? Well, an hour away from north of the Arizona border. You got
right.
the Grand Canyon, you've got the lake, and then you've got Zions, and then you've got Bryce. But Bryce is the most striking because of just the way that whatever came up out of the ground came up out of the ground. Very beautiful.
Yes, and it took a long time to get there.
You see what walked up to the studio a couple of days ago? Right there.
There you are.
That baby.
Holy Gila monster.
Yep.
Did it stay?
No,
Did you put it in your menagerie?
No, they're endangered, so we relocated it out to the preserve.
Oh, look, it's my mother-in-law.
Nice.
No, just kidding.
That's the second one since September.
Oh, really?
They must like it here.
I think.
Yeah,
No,
friendly.
They were chasing a dog a while ago to get a little bit of moisture.
Well, tonight we're going to dispense with our money moment because we have so much to cover. We have all caught wind and heard in the news about the Supreme Court decision. And while we're not going to talk politics, unfortunately, economics and politics are tied together because our politicians pass our tax laws. When they pass the tax laws, it affects all of our planning, our budgeting, our retirement planning, everything. And so it's really important, since we're on the hook to pay things, that we know what those things are that we're paying and how the change will impact us. Now, I realize things are always changing. To be pragmatic, all we can do is go with what the law is today. Again, a big part of financial planning is not to get rid of uncertainty. We can never do that. Big part of our financial planning is being able to deal with uncertainty. So we're going to, Mark is, again, to refresh your memory, those of you who might not remember him, has his doctorate. He also is the founder, CEO, and president of Crown Dental Plan. We've had him on before to discuss that. 30 years as an insurance agent, including health insurance. So this health insurance issue, is not a big issue. And has developed a special way of being able to receive news blips that come on different issues that are of interest to him. And so he's got them all together, whereas you and I may have to grab one here and grab one there. He gets them all in. So, Mark, I'm going to let you just make an introductory comment, and
certainly
I'll try to ask you questions as we go along, and maybe our listeners will have questions on this.
Alrighty. Well, what basically happened is that they approved as constitutional the President Obama's health care plan, and the fortunate or unfortunate thing happened was that they called it a tax. And of course the Democrats run from that because that's what got George Herbert Walker Bush thrown out of office, and they certainly don't want that to happen to Obama. But though the Chief Justice Roberts described it as a tax, what he did, in my opinion, is he played to both sides of the aisle there in order to appease both sides, to create some sort of neutrality in the courts. And in doing so, he threw him a nuclear bomb instead of an actual law by rewriting the tax code into the health care.
What I found interesting is in my circles we had been referring to it as a tax bill anyway, because when you read through it, there is so much money that we have to take out of our pockets and to most of us, if we're taking money out of our pockets and giving it to the government, we do call that a tax. So what he said really was what a lot of us had already determined. And the other thing, too, is I had, with him trying to appease both sides, I find, especially having been out of town, that we regular citizens, we common people, really are holding the Supreme Court in very low esteem. I was at a Little League game, and the umpire went ahead, and this little boy ran to first, and everybody knew he was out. Both teams were leaving the field, and out of the clear blue, he called this little boy safe. And this little boy just starts running, even though the opposing team isn't on the field. Somebody called that a Judge Roberts decision.
Yeah, I think that would be something. An interesting thing that would happen, and I'm not suggesting that it will happen or could happen legally, is that from reading back to the 1800s and prior, the Supreme Court justices, under 2 occasions, had reversed themselves on their own rulings, as long as they can do it within 30 or 60 days. I can't remember the time frame that was involved in that. So very easily Judge Roberts could reverse his decision and then rewrite the majority. So, but I don't think he's going to do that, because I think that by making it a tax, it's a little bit more understandable than a penalty. Originally, everybody was jumping up and down over the fact that they had some sort of free health care. I don't know where the word free came from, because it's not. What President Obama pushed was available and affordable health care. Well, affordability is subject to interpretation. Affordable for whom, and who's it going to affect? There was one thing that a spider bot found in the tax code that was presented in the health care plan, was a little known fact of home sales that occur after January 1st of 2013, that when you buy a house, you're going to be sanctioned, if you want to call it that, 3.8% sales tax on a house, on every house, condo, and other types of property. I don't know about the commercial property, but to give you an example how it's going to hit home, if every house turns over every 5 years at an average, and you find out that you go to sell it and it's a $100,000 house, which you can't buy a house for that now, even in today's markets, that's going to cost you $3,800 in tax. Now, the tax was not found out about until after the bill went through and after I've had some time to do some research. So you have a $200,000 house, which is it's pretty close to the median price of homes. You're looking at a little about $7,200 that you're going to have to pay, and that goes directly to fund the Obamacare.
So what you're saying is we're now going to take in our very, very severely depressed, beat-up housing market where people are just underwater, trying to get their home values back up, that they're now going to take from that home value not only just the closing costs and realtor fees, but they're now going to be assessed an additional $3,800 per $100,000 of sale price, not gain. Are we dealing with gain or sale price?
No, it's going to be a sales price like you're going to buy milk at the store.
Regardless of how much the mortgage is. Regardless of how much the profit is.
Exactly. So if I go to buy your house, and I'm going to give to him the website that he can put up.
And by the way, Josh from Mesa just called in.
Hi, Josh.
And said Obamacare works in other countries. Tell me why it won't work here.
Agreed. Simple.
A lot of other countries, I went to Switzerland a few years ago, but a lot of other countries are smaller, which may be why it's okay in Massachusetts. But when we talked about it to our guide who was in Switzerland, they have a very, very contained border, and they are of one culture, and it was working okay there. But remember, that's a small group of people, and so it's going to be tightly controlled. We have a huge country here, and
right.
I think that that's going to be some things. But whether it works or not, what we're mostly trying to address here are the costs that are involved, and we're just trying to let people know, because when we have a tax law, it affects our pocketbook, and it affects, again, our daily planning, our savings planning. So we want to make sure we understand what the fees are, because those aren't generally addressed in any of the news that we hear. They deal more with, their, I don't know, trying to get people all roused up, depending on what side, doesn't matter. They want to get you all
Right.
riled up. And so, but this is really important, because what on earth does selling your house have to do with funding a program like this?
Because it's in the
apples
tax
and-
bill.
I know. I mean, that's
Right.
what I'm saying. It's people. I should have known that answer. People say to me, "Well, Nancy, why?" And I'll just say, "Because this is one of those apparently because laws." So.
Right.
The sad thing is maybe somebody needs to sell their house, and maybe they can sell it for just what they owe to get out, because maybe they've lost their job and they
Right.
can't afford it. And now because they sell their house, now they're going to be paying this additional tax on the sale of their home. So what we're
Right.
doing is taking somebody who has a house and making them then subsidize something else that they may or may not benefit from.
That's correct. Yeah, and in that example of, do you still have that paper? There was-
Absolutely.
Okay. I wanted to take a look at that because they gave an example of a house that's $400,000, and that would be an upper income home. The tax on that would be $15,200 that they have to add on to the sale price of the house. And also, you have to remember the house has to appraise for that value. Because everybody wants to finance in all the costs. Some of these finance companies say there's no closing cost appraisals or home inspections. Well, that cost is borne within the interest rate of the loan, or you pay it up front. And some people say, well, I don't own a house, I'm never going to own a house, and so why does it affect me? Unfortunately, if you don't own the house, that means you rent a house. If you rent a house, that cost has to be included in the rent or the cost of the person who's investing in that home. And if you don't think that they won't pass those expenses down to you, they will. So like a delivery guy, if the cost of delivering milk or pizzas or whatever goes up for gas, so does his charges to you. Same thing will happen here when you rent a house. Yeah, they'll pass on that fact. Now, a home real estate person is paid 3% commission for the selling agent, 3% commission for the buying agent, and now the 3.8% sales tax on top of it. And that's every time you sell the house. So if you sell the house 10 times, you have 38% of the value of that house going to Uncle Sam, and it goes in the tax bill. And so it's just greed among the country that's pulling these taxes off of everybody. And a $100,000 house is lower than the median price house in America anyway. So it's going to affect anybody who have any hopes of purchasing a house, and it goes directly to the health care plan, and that's also in the bill.
What I find especially troubling about this is there's no regard to whether or not the sale was profitable.
That's right.
And so again, even if what if you're doing a short sale?
3.8%.
Regardless.
Right.
Okay. So this plan is not necessarily affecting the super wealthy that we're always told make more than $200 or $250 a year, who of course can afford to give away a lot of money.
Right.
We're always assuming that the money's given to them, that they're not working really hard for it.
Yeah.
But what I'm concerned about here is this can impact a lot of people who are really struggling, young people or people who've lost their jobs or people who are trying to get back on their feet.
Right.
We're now being told it doesn't matter, everyone will pay this particular fee. And again,
Right.
hitting an industry that's not back on its feet yet.
Excuse me. That's true. You know, a lot of people were complaining that they ought to tax the people that make $1 million or more and in income. And let's say that you're a CEO of a company and you're making $1 million a year. Well, you know, everybody's saying let's attack them. They don't deserve the money. And the ones that are screaming the loudest to attack the millionaire, the guy that's making $1 million and putting $50 million into his business by way of employees, he's entitled to his $1 million, because then you have actresses like Ellen DeGeneres making $50 million a year, and they don't pick on her. Somehow people say that she's earned it. Okay, so did the CEO who's up 12 and 14 hours a day doing the hard work and the actors and those group are earning $50 million, and somehow they deserve it. So it's really, that's part of the problem. It's the class warfare that's going on.
Yeah, and the athletes too. I often marvel because if we can take the tax idea being put on the people, and the same thing, the more the athletes are paid, the higher the price of tickets.
And you want to hear something that's really funny? The more the person makes in terms of celebrities and actors and athletes, sports people, the less the percentage of charity that they give.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. For example, if you're making a person making $100,000 a year has been known to spend 1,000 or 1% of their income towards some sort of charity work. And in this day and age, with the economic times the way they are, that's a pretty good chunk of money. And yet the multiple millionaires, I think it was one CEO was making $4.5 million. It was a petroleum company, and he gave out about 0.5% per year. And the ones that were making $50 and $60 million a year gave 0.012% of their income to charity. And they're the ones screaming that the other people making more than $1 million should pay more in taxes.
Does that go across the board to all earners? So if we go take the athletes, or if we take the entertainers, is that the same?
Actually, as it turns out, the statistical information that we got was that the entertainers, there's a few of them, of course, they belong to Peace Corps and they donate their time and some of their money, of course. But for the most part, the people that what we might consider aren't worth the money that they're earning are the cheapest.
Oh, that's very interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I was curious because I caught a news headline, must have been last week, well, right after this happened, and Boehner said they're going to overturn the health care bill. That's the number one objective. Now, I'm a little puzzled. Is he just giving us political rhetoric? I mean, why would he say something like that?
Well, as it turns out, the Chief Justice Roberts did make it a tax and not a penalty. There is also 17 other taxes that are within the health care bill.
Let me interject. What's the difference now between a tax and a penalty, and why the fact that he made it a tax rather than a penalty is that important?
Certainly. Under the penalty, that would be a mandate, which is under the Commerce Clause of the United States. Under taxation, it's something that can be collected using the power and the force of the Internal Revenue Service.
Which is why we heard about all the money going to the... Now, how much did they send to the Internal Revenue Service? Do you recall the exact number, anybody? Because I had it.
For what's that?
You know, they took money away from Medicare and sent it to the Internal Revenue Service.
500 million.
Is that what it was? I could not. I was on vacation all
week. Or
week.
maybe it was 500 billion. I don't know.
No, it was million. It was 500 million.
million.
But it was taken from Medicare, and so I've got my Medicare people. In fact, they are, and a lot of the assessments that are done is the money being taken away from Medicare. They feel is going to be unsustainable because it's going to make the hospitals
a lot
go
of truth
broke.
to that. Right.
All right. Well, back to my Boehner question. Okay, so the penalty. So this whole Commerce Clause thing that he threw out, or that they threw out, really was the change in definition, because a penalty would be under the Commerce Clause, but they said it was a tax.
Right.
So that changes it. And go ahead and continue.
And even though the Supreme Court ruled it a tax rather than under Commerce Clause conditions, what people don't realize is that they say we're going to have affordable health care, and that didn't happen, and it won't happen. Boehner said that they're going to repeal the law. They want to do that in its entirety because those 17 other taxes that are in the bill, which is unrelated to the health care, are still there. So they want to be able to repeal, and that's something that was like an endorsement, or it was attached to the bill, and that's something that most people didn't pay attention to because they were more concerned about being forced to take health insurance rather than to look at the entire bill. 2,700 pages in the health care bill is way too much to look into to determine all of what's in it. And I did a search on a spider bot that found, using the percent symbol, to determine if there was anything in there that had anything to do with taxations anyway. And as it turns out, these other taxes that are newly formed taxes are in the bill. So, and then it also applies to all income levels.
All income levels. Now, we've been told that this only applies to income levels above a certain amount. So can you elaborate on that?
What Obama originally said was anyone above or below $250,000 income would not be charged this tax because they would have tax credits. And as I said on the previous time I was here, that if you don't pay tax and you get a credit, what good is it? So you still have to buy your health care, and then the government comes along and says, okay, when you pay taxes, we're going to credit you X number of dollars, and it's a percentage of their income, their gross income. And a funny thing, I think that's also 3.8% of your gross income too.
Let me rephrase that to make sure we have a clear understanding. So when we're told that it will be subsidized for lower wage earners,
right,
the subsidy is in the form of a tax credit.
That's
is that
right.
What you're saying? Oh,
That's
okay.
correct.
You're right. That won't help.
Now there is
a
bunch of hoops that you have to go through.
So the subsidy is not actually the government sending money. It's not actually the government reducing the premium amount.
No.
It's going to be the working person pays the full premium amount. Then when tax time comes,
if
they have
owe
the credit.
taxes, they get the credit.
If they do not owe taxes, they're still paying
then
this
they've blown
premium
out the
amount.
door with the money, right?
Okay.
So
I don't think a lot of people are aware of that.
well, a lot of people aren't aware of a lot of things that's in the bill. Whenever we located the bill with the sales tax on homes, that was a major deal because that's going to affect everybody from every level. And a lot of people were jumping up and down saying, we get free health care or we get guaranteed health care. Well, they could have gotten health care much cheaper before. I want to read something, if we have time to do this, a media letter that came from Blue Cross Blue Shield that's going to freak you out. And, especially because it relates to the cost of health care. Everybody was saying health care costs were going to go down. This is a quote direct from Blue Cross. It says, since the introduction of the reform bill, we've expressed our concern that many of its provisions will increase the cost of health care, which is totally opposition to what Obama said. Continuing and highlighted, while the law goes a long way to extend access to more people, it falls short on affordability. The next challenge for policymakers will be to address, quote, the staggering cost of health care, end quote. So that comes from the major health insurance carrier that already knows that it's going to be a staggering cost and it's going to be impossible to fund it. It's like you have a loaf of bread that will feed 5 people and there's 30 people wanting to eat it. Somebody's going to starve regardless. So that's where that came from.
Yeah, well, Blue Cross, of course, I think is a name everyone will know.
Nationwide.
Nationwide. And I think anybody listening will say, oh, I have heard of Blue Cross Blue Shield. So if they're sending a media release like that, it is really worth listening to. I came across a couple of other little fees. I know that they've already started a 10% fee on indoor tanning clinics.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's another one, too.
Right. Is that just just a random fee they
That's
thought
one of the 17, and that's supposed to go to the health care center. Of course, people that say they can't afford health insurance, if they go to the tanning booth, they're paying for it anyway, on top of the mandate. Now, there was something that I learned last time I was here, that they're building a major 2 million square foot data center in Utah, of all places, and they said that it was in order to store data from search engines like Google and all that. But it wouldn't surprise me if that new center was something that was in the works already to house the necessity of the need for additional IRS workers. Because when you think about it, Ogden, Utah is already, they're busting at the walls in terms of their usage of their building. They don't think they have any more room there. And Obama was right. There's about 80,000 new jobs that were in June that came on to the payrolls of of private government. But when this new center opens up, my speculation is that same 80,000 number will probably be IRS agents, because now it's almost like you're going to be audited every year by the IRS to make sure that you have health insurance, which is the function of what's in the health care bill. So that means that when you go to do your taxes, it's going to ask you for the policy number and the premium that you paid for your health care. And if you write down that you have no health care, they will send you a bill from the government for your penalty.
I had read somewhere that the penalty, there will still be a lot of people that are uninsured because they can't afford the insurance, and it will be cheaper to pay the government the penalty for not carrying insurance than it will be to buy the insurance, and mostly it's going to be, again, younger single people. Now, have you read that or picked up on that?
That's true, but let's think about this looking forward, and let's say that assuming that you don't get caught not having health insurance for one of the previous years, the IRS is going to check every tax record to see if you paid it. Now, what does that do? That ups the percentage of being audited, because now the IRS is going to be in your books every year. Every person will have some sort of entry, and they will verify it. And they're going to connect, maybe that data center is going to connect with insurance companies using your Social Security number to be able to validate the fact that you have had health insurance for the entire year. Now, if you go 11 months and 2 weeks with health insurance and you're off for 2 weeks, the next question would be, the 2 weeks that you didn't have health insurance for that particular year, will you be penalized or taxed, in this case, for the whole year?
Oh, the whole year, even not, so it's not a prorated penalty, or excuse me,
There's
tax,
nothing in any of the language
tax
that I read that has anything to do with prorated.
Now the question is, if they use that for the entry, so to speak, into looking at tax returns, will they also then use that to look at other things on the return? Do we know
like
that's
Schedule C's, income
Right.
verification and all that. All that does is it gives Uncle Sam the ability, because it's like when a cop pulls you over for a probable cause. Well, they should have probable cause to pull you over to be able to check your license, and nowadays, if you're a citizen or not. Well, this gives the government automatic probable cause to audit anybody based on checking on your health insurance premiums that were either paid or not paid. And to me, that's very, very much borderline Big Brother looking at you, and it's not even a stretch in terms of worrying about whether or not they can do it. They will.
So it sounds like that's going to increase record keeping. So whereas making sure that our records are tight, because we're going to have to assume that we're going to be audited, and we're going to have to make sure that it's just not that we're not trying to keep good records, but we're going to have to take extra time.
Yeah,
and tax preparation already takes a lot of time, so it's going to up many people's time element.
That's true. And not only that, but you can bet that the first few years that they're trying to collect money, they're going to check everyone for it. So it's like if you work at 5 places in a year and you report that you work at 4 places, then the red flag will come up that you didn't report certain income, because it'll naturally be searching for why you didn't do that. And then you'll get a letter from the IRS saying, we've got information showing that you've earned $32,000 at XYZ company. Why isn't that on the taxes? Well, the same thing is going to happen to your health care. If you don't pay your health care, then they're going to wonder what happened to it, and they will send you a letter. Now, the next thing is, it's going to have control over 100% of the population who has a Social Security number, because if you don't have income for any specific year and you don't file taxes, now it's easier for them to say, where's your tax forms? Because you have to file a tax form even if you earn nothing.
So all the people now that are exempt from filing because they earn less less than the amount that triggers a tax, because I know a number of people who do not have to file, will now be forced to file.
They have to.
How low is
To
that?
report.
Isn't that like $500 or something?
No.
400.
You know people that make less than $400?
Well,
Well,
it's higher than that, because I have clients after
for
they're
paying tax or for
for
filing?
filing. Yeah, for
Yeah,
filing.
because when I was lucky enough to get audited last year, and they were telling me, "Oh, that was a blast." Let me tell you, if you ever want to lose weight in a hurry, get an audit letter.
And lose sleep, I would imagine.
Oh yes. But anyway, no. According to the lady that audited my accounts, $400 you have to have.
Is that of earned income? What
Right.
about, I think it's higher for passive income then.
Right, it could be $600. See, how's that work? She said $600. Oh, no, I know what it is. The W-2s, you don't have to send them out for anything less than $600. The person that paid out less than $600 to someone, and I can see why they would want to do it that way, because, there would be literally tens of thousands of people that were hired throughout the year, but anything over 600, you have to do a 1099 or a W-2. Well, if you're doing a 1099 or W-2 for anything over $600, that's reportable. If it's reportable, you have to report it.
Okay, so it's going to make more people that haven't had to do the form. So it's going to up the business, I guess, of all the tax preparers if those have to all go in.
Yeah,
Right.
if you're
Maybe
if
that's
you're
another
not-
part of the jobs creation, right?
We're not supposed to yell yay, are we?
No.
That's
But
true.
another part that I found, I found this part disturbing initially, because before it was relabeled as a tax bill, it was originally labeled as health care and health affordability. So the part that I did not like, that I felt very inconsistent, again, this was when it was new, is the upping of the amount you can deduct on medical. Right now, you can
Right.
take medical expenses above 7.5% of your adjusted gross income, and that can be deducted on your Schedule A. And that's very helpful for people that have
Self-employed.
self-employed, or medical expenses that are not covered, or if they have to go and get a lot of dental work done, or they're getting the hearing aids, just things that aren't covered by insurance. And that is being up to 10%. So we're now having another amount of medical,
Right.
regardless of whether it's eyes or ears or whatever, that we're going to be paying out and not being able to receive some type of a deduction for. And I thought, well, how is that making medical care more affordable?
No, it's
when
not.
when you're raising the tax on it. And that's another provision I just had found very inconsistent.
Another thing too is there's several, because I own an insurance agency. There were a couple of companies that broadcast to all the agents. They had great news, and I'm thinking, gosh, if they have great news, I'd like to hear it. And what the great news was, you could buy an insurance policy with a $10,000 deductible. Now tell me, if you have to pay the first $10,000 out there, and you can't afford $1,400 a year for insurance, where's that going to help?
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
true.
but those higher deductibles, they're made for major medical problems, right? Rather than office visits.
No, not true.
What?
That's right. Aetna just recently said that any of the deductibles that they don't have, the insurance policies as of 2011 are totally different. Maybe it is 2010 it was, that's right, that are different. And what they did was, used to, for like Blue Cross Blue Shield, you would have your blood tests were paid for. Anytime you had to have blood tests or x-rays, and I think that the ER was a maximum of $150 or $75, whatever it was, and that's all gone away. Everything that's had anything to do that's related to health insurance costs comes out of that deductible first.
Is that where I was reading? Because I was reading that this bill does away with does away with the co-payments. You know how you could sometimes go to the doctor and your insurance gave you a $20, $25, $30, $35 co-payment.
Right.
Did the bill eliminate that type
I
of
don't
coverage?
think
Not yet, maybe.
No, as far as I could tell, and I've looked forward into some of the policies that are being written now, and the reason why there's no copay is because you're paying 100% of it against your deductible.
And how are our health savings accounts affected? Are those still available?
Health savings accounts are available, and you can use them for your health well-being, for your health providers, but you still have the same problem. You're going to use more of your health shelters for anything you get done. I mean, even medication recently. They used to have a separate prescription where it was like $15 copay or $25. 2013, they're doing away with that. You pay the full price of whatever it is, whatever they contract that to be. And so if, for example, you have some sort of medication that's $250, $300 a month, you're going to pay the 100% of that. And they're not separating your well care from your prescription, from your vision, hearing, and etc. It's all lumped into one policy, and your one deductible will go towards that.
You know, we've got a lot of baby boomers out there.
Right.
And I meet with people, and they know that they've got to figure out their medical, and many don't retire till 65 so they can keep their medical going. And of course, we understand we have the huge problems with Social Security. We understand we have problems with the funding on Medicare. And rather than tackle those programs first, it's like we just we're burying them with this new program, which also is ill-designed. Just like when Part D first went through, great, we're going to do prescription coverage, but there was no funding vehicle with Part D, so it immediately started $18 billion in debt.
Right.
So we have programs that are not viable right now, and rather than going in and making those viable, we're going to go ahead and add something else on top of it, and an underfunded Medicare program is now having more money taken from it. That's of concern, again, because we have baby boomers, which is a large segment of the population, that are trying to figure out, how will I retire? I had market losses, I've had real estate losses.
Right.
We've got, people were told 55 and older will probably be okay with Social Security.
Right.
So how do I maximize my Social Security, and what about my medical?
Right. Well, the Social Security thing is another thing that's interesting that occurred midpoint this year, probably, I say midpoint, it might have been March of this year. You no longer get a Social Security insurance check. They now call it, government benefit, entitlement.
Entitlement. I heard that change in wording, and I've had people ask me about that.
Right. And so that it's no longer considered that. They make it an entitlement, which means that the government can change the entitlement downward at any point. So anytime you change the description of a product, in this case it was insurance, then something else controls it. Back to the olden days, they had Social Security with the retirement age at 65 back in the 40s and the 30s, and the average person that only lived to age 65. So it was a no-brainer that it was nothing more than a government tax of some sort to fund whatever it is that the government wants to do, of course, to get them reelected, because they're paying off people to contribute to their funds, to get them reelected. I think that the politicians are nowhere near of this type of quality of politician that we had back in the early days of life, but then again, that might relate to things now.
Right. You said there were 17, so what are some of the other
I don't have the names of the 17
list?
taxes, and the reason why I didn't is because some of it I didn't quite understand how they were going to go about the taxes, but the tanning booth thing it's along the same kinds of lines as that. There's also a, what is it? When you go to a resort and you get facials and you get spas and saunas and all that, they're also going to charge a tax on that, which goes to the health care. Suntan product, not just the tanning booths, but any suntan product where you could get skin cancer and you're using product to stop yourself from having a melanoma, that's being taxed. So there's several things. The biggest one is the real estate, because if you think about the thousands and thousands of homes that are sold, and the median price of homes now is around 195,000 to 250, and you consider you're looking at maybe $7,000 per home sold. That's an awful big burden to put on people.
It is. My concern is the money also being taken away from Medicare. When we have, again, we have a bill passed as an affordability, we're not going to find it to
Only
be...
on label.
Yeah, affordable, as I talk to my Medicare aged people, and we're having to now encourage people to set aside monies to pay for things. And part of planning that we need to think about is, what if there's a medical procedure today that's $150, but maybe down the road it's going to be $2,000 a month rather than $150 a month?
Right.
These are the things that are uncertain and unpredictable. So we're encouraging people in our planning to work a little bit longer.
Well, and not only that, now that investments are being fleeced away from us, you have to work longer. You have to work until you die, basically, because there's no way that you're going to be able to survive off of Social Security, especially today. I mean, when houses are renting for $1,200 and $1,400 a month, and your benefits are $1,250, and then they automatically take out the premium for Medicare from the Social Security benefits, you're in the hole by $400 or $500. There's not even money to give to the church at 10% if you're a tither, and it's just that doesn't include food.
Well, and the change of Social Security now being called an entitlement, I think, is very important.
It's indicative of what our country's doing.
Well, and what might occur going forward. Now, again, we've been told that people about 55 and older should not see any change in their Social Security, but we sometimes see a foundation, so to speak, of being laid for the future. The railroad retirement people, if you talk to anybody who worked for the railroad...
My father was an engineer for the railroad,
so
B&O.
Tell us the story.
Well, that same thing happened to him. He was supposed to receive a percentage of his income, and I thought it was like 65% or something like that when he retired. He broke his back, and so he took a disability retirement and did not get Social Security. He only had railroad retirement. And then, of course, as the railroads went broke and as the railroads merged, all that benefit went away, because it's like the AIG thing, they had to have either subsidies, which they kept AIG together because that's where all the congressmen's retirement packages were kept. But that wasn't the case for some of the railroad people.
I was told that originally, if it was in the railroad, we can call, because I really looked into this because I thought I've been concerned about precedents. And so that the railroad people told me that they had loaned money to the government, and rather than the government paying back, they took over their retirement and then merged it with Social Security, which really ticked the railroad people off.
Well,
at the
it
time.
Basically took the money from the railroad.
Right.
Now the only people that have any real money is the insurance companies.
Well, the concern, I often have people asking me, gosh, Nancy, is the government going to come take over our 401ks? And I don't like people to walk around being really afraid. So I say, well, there's nothing in the works for that right now, and it doesn't appear that there is in the works anything
Not
in the
that
works
I
for
can
that right now. So
remember
we should
seeing.
be okay with all of those retirement programs. I don't want to have anybody out there being all worried and all scared about that. But I think planning is always really important.
Mm-hmm.
And it used to be, when we had a group of retirees that really had a really good time with it. They
Right.
put the Social Security in, they were able to get their income out. But ultimately, it looks like that people are going to have to be going back to just taking care of themselves. And so we need to be with less income because
Sure.
of all of these taxes that will be going
Gotcha.
out. Mm-hmm. So
Very
we have
good.
to really work on saving taxes. Again, there's a lot of planning tools for this going
Absolutely.
forward. Now, I think it's time for us to take a little break. So we'll take a break for a few minutes, and then we'll
Hi,
be back.
Daniela.
Are you experiencing computer problems? Is your computer running slow, bogged down with viruses and spyware? You need a reliable and knowledgeable, trustworthy computer service company. Contact Computers, Networks, and More, located in Santan Valley. Get your computer or laptop running in top condition by a certified technician with 20 plus years experience and beta tester from Microsoft. Computers, Networks, and More provides repairs and solutions to any computer-related issue, whether it's software, installation, troubleshooting, updates, or tune-ups. You can trust Computers, Networks, and More. Contact Jeff Monday through Saturday, 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. to schedule an appointment. We can have you up and running quickly, usually within 48 hours. Located in Santan Valley. Computers, Networks, and More. We're here for you. Contact Jeff at 480-729-8899. That's 480-729-8899.
More music 24 hours a day.
Oh, yeah. Woo. The big stuff. Who do you think you are? Mr. Big Stuff.
Life can be tough, and good people can face great challenges. My name is Mark Windsor, and I'm an experienced attorney and counselor at law. I've helped many good people work through financial struggles and regain financial stability and prosperity. It can be overwhelming dealing with creditors, the frustrations of a loan modification, struggling with the stress of a short sale. Sometimes your decisions can lead to risks down the road that you couldn't foresee without a trusted counselor on your side. At times, even bankruptcy must be carefully considered. At Windsor Law Group, we understand the stress you are under, and we provide compassionate professional advice so you can decide the best path back to financial security and prosperity. Call us at 480-505-7044 or check us out at windsorlaw.com, WINSORLAW.com. Mention you heard us on the radio and get a discount on your initial consultation.
Are you ready to start taking control of your future and maximize your earning potential? Central Arizona College has smaller class sizes and personalized attention to help you compete in today's tough job market. CAC now serves Santan Valley and Queen Creek. The CAC Santan Center is located in the shops at Copper Basin on Hunt Highway, behind Barrow's Pizza. Stop in and see how taking classes at CAC costs a fraction of a state university, and your credits can transfer. So, if you want to earn real money, you need to learn real skills at Central Arizona College. Enroll in classes today by calling 480-677-7825 or visit www.centralaz.edu or call 480-677-7825 or visit www.centralaz.edu. Central Arizona College, your college, your way.
Alrighty, we are back with Money and Motivation on KQCK radio station here with Nancy Fleming and special guest Dr. Mark Meadows.
Good afternoon. This particular tax bill, because it's 2,700 pages, takes a lot of unraveling, kind of like peeling back the onion skin that we often will talk about, and we get more interpretations in the process of time as more and more people read it, and as it's defined, and as it's lawsuits are brought up. Often lawsuits are the way that we often learn what a tax law means, which is a little bit too late. But there are a couple of things that I wanted to mention also. And one is that wealthy people will still have insurance because there are going to be Cadillac plans available. So we're still going to have this discrepancy, and people think, well, the wealthy are going to pay for all of this, but the wealthy are going to be taken care of.
What's a Cadillac plan?
Cadillac plan is a super good plan that's very expensive, and you'll be allowed to have it. You will have to pay a 40% surcharge on it.
That's right. And the government also has the Cadillac plan presently in Congress. If you were to give the government the same plan that everyone else would have to have, they would vote it out tomorrow. I mean, it would literally take overnight. I mean, it sort of like reminds me of that one girl that was on life support, and they went to Congress. It was emergency session, and they stayed up late in the night to create some sort of law to force them to be able to keep her alive. Shivo. That was her name, Shivo. Well, that's how fast they would react if they had the same kind of plan that we do. It's sort of like when Nancy Pelosi was making money by insider trading, hundreds of millions of dollars, and then all of a sudden somebody thought that that was a crime, and now they have to listen to the same, or they have to abide by the same laws that we do. You would have gone to prison for the things that they were able to get by with. So we have to have a Congress that lives by the same rules and lives in the same United States that we do.
And I got to thinking too, because if we go back to the higher athletes and entertainers,
Right.
they're not going to be on the wait list we've been told
Never.
about, because they're going to be able to buy their Cadillac plan, pay their 40% surcharge, and still have access to to medical care on demand, whatever it is that they feel like
Right.
is needed.
And the biggest concern is not particularly the insurance to pay for it, but you have to remember what the government's trying to do is to control the income of being a doctor. And even if you can pay for the insurance, are the doctors going to still be here to take care of you? Because that's a major concern. There is a group in Little Rock, Arkansas, that houses 40 or 50 doctors. They're all quitting on 2014 if this bill continues, because they can't continue to see the patients that they're seeing. And I just learned yesterday that more than 50% of all the doctors out there do not take the Medicare.
It
More
is
than
decreasing. We have a
50%,
lot
yes.
in Arizona who do, but the bill itself and the definition that I read, which I used Wikipedia as
Right.
we've discussed before, was talking about how the unsustainability of the reduction in Medicare, because the hospitals won't be able to afford to treat them, and so they're not going to be able to continue to erode Medicare because the hospitals will go broke. So that's what I'm saying. Rather than move forward, we might think about fixing Medicare, since it's already been there for 30-some plus years, and fixing the Social Security so we don't have to rename it entitlement, because all of us who've worked our whole lives, and anybody out there working and paying into Social Security will certainly agree, been paying into a retirement plan, and to have it jerked out and now called an entitlement is really insulting to many very hardworking people.
Absolutely.
There are other taxes going in on higher income earners, now whether they're working or whether they're receiving some type of passive income. We've seen this already start, because a lot of people may not be aware, but Medicare already has a sliding scale.
Yes, it does.
Yeah, so they're right, just shy of $100 a month for Medicare. But if you're higher income, and a lot of people, this will be if we add their pension and their distributions from their retirement accounts, they can be paying $196 or $300.
Sure.
So that's already a precedent that is set in place. On top of this, we're also going to be seeing some Medicare surcharges going on that. We have a 3.8% Medicare tax on unearned income of high income tax payers. And it's going to go ahead and be exclusive of the capital gains exclusion. So you may have a capital gain exclusion, but the fact that you have income that's a passive income is not going to exclude you from the Medicare tax.
That's correct. So
And
you're
that's
still
worth
going
the
to
2 and
pay tax on
250.
it, right?
hmm And so, whereas normally for people who understand about if you sell something for a gain, you can offset it with a loss.
Right.
We're going to go ahead and not see that for the Medicare tax, and that's really important to understand too.
That also affects someone that maybe if they die, their estate changes quite a bit too.
They do, right? And that's another question. We don't really know what's going to happen next year, do we, yet,
No.
on the death tax?
No, so far,
They
it's
play
not.
with that like it's a ping pong ball.
Right.
The classes I go to, they say, I think we'll keep the $5 million exemption, but who knows? That is not the way the law reads today.
Right. I think today they were supposed to vote on repealing, or maybe it was no, it's Wednesday. That's right. They're voting to repeal the entire law, the Obamacare law, because of all these 17 taxes that are in there, because of all the other things. That's just impossible. When an insurance company, a major insurance company, and everybody thought that the insurance companies was in the same bed as the government because they're going to have all of a sudden 30 million more people for customers. But whenever they write letters that says that their health care is going to be staggering, there's got to be a problem with that. So,
Yes, I would agree. Well, I mean, because they've been around such a long time with the Blue Cross, they would know. And they do, don't they have some? Again, you're the health insurance person, but aren't they affiliated with some federal? Isn't there federal Blue Cross, Blue Shield, and companies that have Blue Cross?
the funny thing about Blue Cross that people don't know about is it's like a franchise. The Blue Cross in Arizona is not the same as Blue Cross Anthem in California, so they have to sink or swim on their own weight. What's interesting about Blue Cross, along with other companies, is that because they raised in anticipation of this healthcare bill going through, they raised the cost of the premiums. They had to give themselves, now I'm not saying Blue Cross did this, I'm just saying companies like them had to give their executives a bonus of $800,000 in order to stay within the reserve areas of profitability.
Now, that just doesn't make sense.
Right.
So if we're taking premiums from people to cover the cost of care, how does that translate into higher premiums going to the big shots at the insurance companies?
Right. That is a big problem. Of course, every year you hear the insurance companies complain about not being profitable, but with those kind of bonuses, they're definitely profitable. I think that, at least in my business, I've noticed that the healthcare premium has gone up in the last 2 years in anticipation of this bill, 38%.
I've heard that from a lot of people. You can talk to people that are, young families, in their early 30s maybe, that are working, and they've all talked about the cost of their insurance going up and the coverage going down, particularly in the area of maternity benefits.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So having to set more money aside. And the idea is we want to encourage our young families. They're our future. If for no other reason, they're paying into Social Security. And so we don't want to cripple them and make them unable to save for their future or their retirement or even just for their emergencies. So
I think the biggest problem is that life is like an accordion. You go ins and outs in terms of population that goes up and down. And I think that because the population of the baby boomers are here and retiring at thousands a day, nobody anticipated what to do with that kind of persons retiring. And because of that, they got into this giant pickle. And now it's just numbers, it's like juggling different accounts that they're stealing from Social Security for other devices. What was it? The U.S. Post Office would be $2 billion profitable this year, except the government takes some sort of management fund from them, making them unprofitable, and that's why they need the subsidy for the balance. So
they take it on one hand and give it back in the other hand.
That's right. And any time money passes somebody's hand, some of it gets stuck in their hand.
So that is so true, so true. Well, did you have any thoughts on anything else since we have you here today?
Well, all I can say is that, and I know that you've heard this probably a million times, and I'm a centrist, so I'm not particularly one party or the other, except to say that our country is bleeding right now. We're in tremendous turmoil and troubles, and we really need to somehow find a way to sit down at the table and make very, very hard decisions to keep us floating, because, in my opinion, the Russians are looking. They're not coming. They're already here. And President Obama, when he was caught talking to one of the chancellors or whoever it was that came over from Russia and said, when I get elected, after the election, I can do a lot more, tell that to Putin. Well, that we're in trouble, and we need to really, really think hard come this November 6th to vote for the right person, and also to look at it from the practical standpoint, not the popularity. There's no way that you can bring in a bunch of people, the illegals, to get them to vote and all the stuff that's going on that way, and buy votes with the American public's money and expect to stand. This country will fall if we don't look at it from a very, very intelligent and non-biased way.
Right, and we know that with what happened already with the Standard & Poor's devaluation of our bonds, and there's whispers that if we don't straighten it out, they'll do it again. For the first time in history, we're running a $1 trillion deficit year over year, despite taking more taxes in. Next year, again, people will be very surprised because we have a lot of money leaving circulation to go to taxes. We have the Bush tax cuts ending. There's been nothing done to extend them. We have all of these taxes going into place, and so how are we going to go forward with this? And again, just taking the startling house tax as just one example, but then we have our brackets going up by anywhere from 30 to 50%. So we're going to see the additional tax there. So we have to stop and think. It's not that we're not patriotic. We want to tighten our belt to get our government, to get our country back on track monetarily, but it does have to be the same way we do it in our own home. We have to work overtime, and then we have to stop spending.
Yeah, and you got to really consider this too. We had a celebrity that's relinquishing her citizenship of the United States to save $30 million in taxes. Now, if people are wanting to leave the greatest country in the world because it would cost them that much, there's something wrong.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Joe. Do you have any parting comments?
No, I'll tell you, this was enlightening.
And we didn't cover all of the fees. It's just, I really want people to know that we will all be paying more than we think we will, and we will not be getting what we think that we're getting.
Definitely.
And on the one hand, we probably need to let the Supreme Court know, okay, great, at least we have the correct titling for this particular bill. Even though it was upheld, no longer we think it's something that it was not. And anytime there's a tax, with this type of tax, there's probably not going to be anybody that's exempted. I really do worry about people. As I said, half the people, what was it last time I said, half the people in the country earning less than $50,000 a year.
Sure.
And so we've got to be aware that if those people have to pay out any more in taxes, regardless of the fancy name that we give it, we can't make money coming out of our pocket feel any better by giving it a different name. And again, worrying about some of our young families struggling to get their kids raised, get them into college. We want to think about what type of legacy is going on today, politically or procedurally, and what that's going to do to the up and coming generations.
Right, and then when you think about it, if people are suffering by paying an extra 20 or 30 cents a gallon for gas, wait till they get the taxes on this program in terms of the health care. One way or the other, the government's going to get it from you. And now they're using the power and the strength of the IRS to do it. Mm-hmm. So if gas prices at 10 or 20, 30 cents more a gallon is hurting these families, can only imagine what it's going to cost them whenever it's time for taxes.
Yeah, between gas and higher food prices.
That's true.
I think that's the combination of things. And so we appreciate everybody tuning in today. Next week we're going to have we're going to change our tone a little bit since today was so serious. And we're going to have one of the Pointer Sisters next week from the old singing group. So many people remember the Pointer Sisters, talking about what it's like to try to become a famous singer, how you get paid, how you get paid if you make recordings, how does that compare if you're on the road, and just sharing some really great stories that are human interest. So we hope that you will come back again for Money and Motivation, and you have a great evening.
Our family pets are such a big part of our lives. That's why Kelly's Critter Clips of Queen Creek and Sun Lakes has been providing pet grooming services for over 10 years. Your dog's comfort is very important to us, so we take the time to treat your pet with care, love, and professional attention it deserves. We welcome any size and breed and feature shampoo and conditioning, styling, flea and tick dips, ear cleaning, nail trimming, and so many other services that will leave your pet